button, and we are going to get started a little bit differently than we normally do. Um, and I just popped a poll up. If everybody would answer, I think there's 5 questions in there. While you're doing that, just a couple of administrative things. Welcome your participation. I think probably the presentation today is going to last maybe 30, 40 minutes, something like that. That should leave a lot of time for questions, comments, interaction. So please use the chat window. If you want to raise your hand, we can unmute your mic if you'd like to talk. I'm going to give everybody just a few more minutes to answer those questions. The first question is really in there more for my purposes to see how, number one, honest everybody would be. And number two, because I always forget this. So what we're talking about today is something called the E plus R equals O tool, event plus response equals outcome. Do these obviously at least 6 times a year, and we have our IPI forum that a lot of you come to as well. And inevitably after those things, 20 or 30 people will ask, hey, how do I get my CUSP points for this? And it's kind of easy to sort of roll your eyes and say, man, people just don't read the instructions. But if that many people are asking, what you can do is not focus on the event. Think what you want the outcome to be, which is all of you to get your CUSP points for those of you that are. Change how you respond, which is in this case, I'm actually going to tell you during the training so everybody will know. So if you're a CUSP, you'll get an email within 24 hours confirming your attendance. That email can serve as your documentation, and you submit it, request your 1 point. You get a free point for being here, and the webinar is free. So as I always say, we promise, if nothing else, that you'll get what you pay for. And so you can tell there, anybody wants to see those results. A couple of them were quiz questions. About half of you are here to get because it's free and you want your CUSP points. I appreciate the honesty. I know I forced you to answer both. Interestingly enough, rate how well you respond to stressful events and difficult people. And most of the responses were 5 and up, which is a good thing. And that's really what we want to talk about. How emotionally intelligent are you? Really interesting question. That's what we want to talk about how we can use this tool to increase our emotional intelligence. And as we do that, help us to respond to challenging situations and people, hopefully more appropriately. Team stands forward. Did anybody get that one? You can always tell who's together. Everyone achieves more. Together, everyone accomplishes more. The Frontline C5 leadership model. It's in there for a reason. It may seem kind of out of place. Caring is defined as, technically the 2 correct answers with that would be preventing harm and encouraging growth. How trustworthy you are relates to credibility, taking action, courage, your subject matter expertise, competence, and then investing in others is commitment. So nobody got those necessarily right or wrong or anything like that. I just wanted to start out, mainly give myself a reminder about the CUSPs, and also to help us think about our level of emotional intelligence. Because if you read the article, you know this. What we're really talking about is we have some control sometimes over the events that happen to us, what other people are doing, what the organization you work for is doing, what's happening around and to you. And we really want to focus away from the event to how we're going to respond to the event. Think about what you want your ideal outcome to be, and that will help them influence your responses. So use E plus R equals O, event plus response equals outcome, that tool, to demonstrate how much you care. Again, preventing harm and encouraging growth. And that's always a great question to start with, is whatever this situation is, whatever this person has done or is doing, how in this situation can I demonstrate how much I care about both preventing harm and encouraging growth? You can use the E plus R equals O tool to increase your emotional intelligence, and equally important, to enhance culture, relationships, and your team. Together, everyone achieves more. the performance of your team, remembering that performance equals behavior plus results. So that's what we're here to talk about. And one of my favorite topics, one of my very favorite tools. And I kind of will let you just do a quick little self-assessment on emotional intelligence. And I was really encouraged earlier. Most of you seem to think you had a fairly high level of emotional intelligence. I know a lot of you, and I agree with that and think that that's true. And real simple, it's if you ever want to take an assessment, by the way, we do offer those where you can get a formal score and all that, but this is real informal. I think it's helpful. So if you gravitate more towards the left side of the screen, low emotional intelligence, opportunities there. Hopefully most of us gravitate more towards the right side of the screen, that high emotional intelligence column. The couple that we want to really focus on, all of them in the low emotional intelligence, but do we tend to blame others for problems and difficult situations, or are we looking more for solutions to those problems and accepting responsibility ourselves? How do you handle conflict and confrontation? And so, some of this might depend on your DISC profile and your personality and other things like that, but do you get angry in conflict and confrontation? Do you avoid and withdraw? Do you try to, next bullet down there, focus more on competition and winning? And those are the ones in the middle there that we want to really focus on is how do we handle conflict, confrontation? How do we handle difficult people, difficult situations? And this is a great tool. The thing I love about this tool is how effective it is and also how simple it is. And the key to it is to practice it. And we'll talk more about how to do that and some specific situations where it applies, because organizationally, most of you that I know are leaders from an authority standpoint. If you're in safety, you always have the authority of the rules, the procedures, your safety manual, all that sort of thing. But how can we use this tool to gain influence is really what we want to focus on and demonstrate that caring that we talked about. So there's the emotional intelligent. What we're really working towards is how can we make emotionally intelligent, outcome-oriented decisions? Excuse me. And in thinking about that, this isn't a complete list. I'm not going to go through all these, but I just want us to think about everything that goes into every single decision that we make. And these happen about that quick, all at the same time, some more than others. There's internal and there's external of this, but there is a lot that goes into every single decision that we make. And you make a lot of minor decisions, like what socks you put on today or something like that, that probably aren't going to affect you and your team that much throughout the day. You also make a lot of decisions, especially in those challenging and stressful situations, that have a huge and lasting impact in terms of culture and in terms of relationship and things like that. So the key value of this tool probably is it just gives you time to think about what's going into this decision and what do I want to get out of. So the combination of those two, making emotionally intelligent, outcome-oriented decisions, is really what we're working towards. And I've got a quick little video clip here that I want to show you. And if everybody doesn't mind, just when it starts playing, quick thumbs up that you can hear it, because I don't want to waste 2 minutes of our time. If not, and Doug, who's with us, and he might have some comments after the video plays, is the star of the show here. So we're going to watch this because this video is a 2-minute clip from IPTV, which is something you'll see and hear more of in the future, titled Emotionally Intelligent Decision Making.
Frontline IPTV, videos designed to educate, empower, and enhance.
Making emotionally intelligent decisions could be one of the most impactful things that we do. Reading the situation, those verbal and physical cues that we see around us, could be the difference on what the outcome of the event is. Meaning that the event plus the type of response that you have equals the outcome, or E plus R equals O. And one of the best examples is that maybe we're on our way to David's son Carter's basketball game. And we want to get to that basketball game because we're running a little bit behind and we're trying to get ourselves there. But we pull up to a stoplight and the person next to us is having an extreme amount of road rage. The way we respond to that person could be dictate what outcome we get. Are we going to make it to Carter's game? Are we actually going to engage with that person, which could be any kind of an outcome from there? So we don't even really know what the outcome is going to be, but the event's the same. We have a road rage person next to us, and if we ignore them and we carry on, or we get some distance between us and them, that could be the difference on what kind of outcome that we have. We really want to make sure that we respond to the type of outcome we want, so that the event we have doesn't really change, but the way we respond to it will give us that best result or outcome.
All right. So, Doug, number one, thank you for being here. And thank you for that video. In there, you mentioned verbal and physical triggers. Talk to us a little bit about that and how to appropriately respond to those. I love the road rage example, right? The event is the other driver. You have no control over it. How you respond has a huge influence from acts of violence to vehicle accidents, whatever those negative outcomes may be. And I really love that example for this tool. So if you don't mind, just talk a little more about your thoughts about it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, David. I really believe that those two pieces that we started with here today, with emotional intelligence and E+R=O, are tied together very closely, because let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, your emotional intelligence is a 2 or 3, but realizing that when you have things that are higher on the scale, they're going to be harder for you to deal with, meaning that you're going to have those physical or emotional triggers that are going to be like, you're going to see people fold their arms, you're going to see people roll their eyes, you're going to see, and I consider that on the emotional intelligence as being the negative side of that. But if there were a positive, I might see David lean forward and act like, hey, I have something to add, or I want to engage in it. That could also be a positive spin to that too. So you could have a little bit of both, but the ideal of it is to make sure that whatever it is that you're doing, whether it's driving, whether it's working, whatever it is, you want some final outcome. You want a good outcome for what's happening. So in order for that to happen, you have to really look at what kind of response are you going to give, even if it's painful sometimes. I think that sometimes some people have more emotion on their sleeve than the others. And you have to look at that and say to yourself, hey, what do I want for the outcome? And that may boil the soup a little bit for you and put you in a place where you respond a little bit better. So that's really the gist of what we were trying to cover here, is give people an idea that you have to self-reflect all the time, because really intelligent people will make poor emotional intelligent decisions every day. So it's not, it's not because somebody's not intelligent in the scholastic sense. It's really for getting people to understand that they're going to have a balance of that. That's going to take the outcome. And so you have to really look at it as what we see the most, because people will respond poorly. If I say something and I see David's face get sour and he sits back, and it would be easy from the emotional intelligence piece to ignore him with 50 people in the room and not really pay attention to that at all. But the people around him are watching also what my emotional intelligence is with him as that's happening. But what I really should do is say, David, what bothered you about what I just said? And let's talk about that. And saying that I want a good outcome. So I want to make sure that whatever I put on the table here doesn't become a factor again, right?
Yeah, I love that. I don't know if you noticed, but my sour face wasn't very good as you were saying that. I tried. But the thing about it is, right, any tool we teach gives you time to think, helps you focus your attention properly, and then helps you maintain, in safety terms, proper control of your work. Right now, we're talking about give you a little time to think, that age-old wisdom, think before you act, right? Help you focus your attention where it needs to be, on the outcome, not the event. And then more so help you maintain control of yourself in this situation. And there's a quote I've really started using a lot that I love is, good tools help us work better. Great tools help us think better. And this is a great tool. And I want to talk about it in terms of a couple of common occurrences for everybody, and talk about how maybe historically we've typically responded and what kind of culture and relationships that's created, and how we can optimize those responses to optimize culture and relationships. Because that's really what it is. This tool helps us optimize our response to any event, no matter how good or how bad it is. And that's one thing I really don't think we talk enough about, is how do we respond to good things and the things that we want. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But that helps us, again, enhance safety, relationships, decision-making, and a whole lot of other things. A little bit of background, if you want to learn more about this, the book, The Success Principles from Jack Canfield, I think I'm correct in saying 164 principles in that book. I could be wrong. But number one, and I think he made it number one for a reason, the principle he calls is take 100% responsibility for your life. And a couple of little principles underneath that. And this is really important. Think about this. Use feedback to your advantage. And stop and think about E plus R equals O. Somebody gives you feedback, especially feedback maybe that you don't like or don't agree with. How you respond to that matters, and it matters a lot. Because if Doug's giving me feedback and I come back with the ABCDE stuff, accuse, blame, complain, defend, deny, make excuses, I attack Doug, whatever that may be. Number one, he's probably not going to give me feedback in the future. And number two, what feedback I just heard, I actually didn't hear, and it can't help me learn and improve. So in terms of that, and I like to say this, and I'll give Doug credit. He's the one that I got it from, but you can learn and improve, or you can name and blame. You can't do both. You can name and blame. You can learn and improve. You can't do both. Because in the book, he also says, pay attention. Your results don't lie. And that is a huge source of feedback for you, is the results that you're getting. And I don't want to disagree with him, because, but results, I always like to say performance is a better word there, right? Performance equals behavior plus results. And good behavior doesn't always equal good results. Bad behavior doesn't always equal bad results. The example, I think we even used this in one of these Frontline Fundamentals webinars a few months ago, but if your son or your daughter comes home from school and they give you a report card that says straight A's, and you say, respond, hey, great job, here's some ice cream, and you give them a prize. What if they're cheating, and their behavior was they're cheating, the results is straight A's, you're focusing more on the results than behavior? So maybe substitute the word and say, pay attention, your performance doesn't lie. That combination of behavior and results. But it's a great source of feedback with the results. And when you're not getting the results you want, we'll talk about your circle of control, influence, and concern a little bit later on. The thing to focus on is, how can I respond differently to that same event in the future? Name and blame, learn and improve. Can't do both. That's what we use the tool for. And I love that quote at the bottom of the screen there, so I'm going to take the time to read it carefully. Life is 10% what happens to you, events, and 90% how you respond. And Charles Swindoll said that, give credit where credit's due. So I kind of want to go through a couple of these. And Doug already mentioned in the video the road rage incident, which I think is a great starting point, right? Your response can be ignore, avoid, de-escalate. You get the positive outcome of, I arrive safely and on time. Or, now, and this is really important, think about if you exhibit in stressful situations a low level of emotional intelligence, you're very likely to get angry and confront that other driver. And if you don't use the tools, that's why the tools are so important, is to give you time to think about, where are my emotions right now? How can I control them? And what decision should I make? If you don't do any of that, you don't use the tools, and or you define your outcome poorly, in that situation, you're increasing your chances, let's say that, of getting involved in some kind of act of violence, a vehicle crash, or somewhere in the middle of all that. You might be late to wherever you're going. You've increased your chances of a negative outcome. And so the next one that I want to talk about, successes and errors. This is really, really important. And I already feel like with errors, I think we've gotten better at errors. And what I mean by that is, And let's just take near miss reporting. I voluntarily report to you that I made an error. Okay. How you respond to that. And unfortunately, going back 10, 15 years ago, legacy culture, so to speak, our historic responses to people voluntarily reporting things to us were we either punished them for it, tried to figure out who we were going to blame, and or we ignored it, meaning they didn't see any action from it. So what happened? People stopped reporting them. Obviously, if you stop and think, hey, somebody just voluntarily shared with me an error that they made, whether it was intentional or not, details aside, if I stop and think, I want to demonstrate how much I care right now to prevent harm and encourage growth. That's a great starting point for what you want the outcome to be, which is actually you not only want that person, but you want other people to continue to be comfortable reporting those near misses and errors. So the fill in the blanks there are you're either going to reduce success and repeat errors, or you're going to repeat errors and reduce errors, repeat success, or increase errors and decrease success. That is really, really important to think about with both successes and errors, because I won't go, actually, I will. Everybody can use the chat window right now. What happens if you ignore and do nothing about success? Because this attitude of, hey, safety's, especially with safety, hey, safety's people's job. It's what we pay them to do. I'm never going to compliment anybody. That's what's expected. It's a pretty common attitude I hear from people. And I'm just interested in your thoughts right now. Either raise your hand, I'll unmute your mic, or type in your chat window. But what happens to success if you ignore it? That's insightful. Gives the impression you don't care. At best, I guess my point is this. At best, people will start to form habits and work out of habit patterns rather than knowing what they're doing is good and wanting to repeat it. So I really want you to think about that, and don't use this tool just as it really is important. I mean, primarily you want to use this tool when you're really feeling stressed and challenges and you're having bad performance, so to speak. But it is equally, if not more important, to think about how to use this tool when things are going well to make sure that you're repeating the success.
Yeah, and David, I would say that success is something that we say, hey, if we see nothing, there's nothing going on, and or we hear nothing and there's nothing going on. And I think that what happens is that actually provokes more bad behavior as well, because they also will say, well, we had a bunch of close calls, but we were successful and nobody was hurt, so there's no reason to table that right now until somebody gets hurt. And then we talk about the accident as being the pinnacle. So I always say that's the aftermath of responding correctly in the first place to get the right outcome.
100%. And let me say this, and I'm not judging utilities and favoring contractors. People, please don't think that's what I'm saying. Don't hear that. But a pretty common response anymore in contractor evaluation and when contractors have incidents is the utility that they're working for will pull up all the near misses that they've reported, which are a good thing, and then use them against them and say, well, no wonder you had an incident. You've had more near misses than everybody else. When in reality, they're probably actually just being maybe a little more honest than everybody else and actually telling you what's going on. The second you do that, what's that contractor going to do in the future?
Yeah, they're not going to bring any of it up. And I think that the big part of that too is that you want to anytime I work with any companies that we do work with, and they have 2 or 3 recordables and 25 near misses, just using that for arbitrary numbers. But but I would consider that to be a healthy environment, that they're at least talking about them before they end up there. But if they have 10 recordable incidents and no non-recordable or near misses, that tells me the only time they're going to speak up is when they're on their way to the hospital. And that's a really bad time to find out. So there again, it's, what kind of outcome do you want and the way you respond to it. I always tell everyone, you might hear some things you don't want to hear while that's going on, but you also want to find out about ahead of time before you have an event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I use the utility contractor relationship. That also applies to your employees, your peers. Please, please, please hear me say that. This tool may be more important at the peer-to-peer level than it is anywhere else, because that is where we really, truly can create culture and relationships and a true sense of holding each other accountable. So really think about how you respond to successes and errors. No, I'm not going to read through the whole list there. We've talked a little bit about same thing. Think about, you watch me an unsafe act. Doug's standing underneath a suspended load without his hard hat on. The important part of that, don't let me get sidetracked, Doug, is not the hard hat, right? The hard hat's there as a last line of defense. But how I respond matters, right? If I approach Doug and like the rule says you have to have your hard hat on, and I'm focused on rules and compliance, Doug's probably going to perceive that I'm kind of I'm not even going to say the word, and that I don't care about him much. But if I actually focus a little bit on the hazard and show Doug, I want to prevent harm and encourage growth right now. What you're doing is not okay. It could get you hurt. He said it. He might not like what I hear, but he's going to appreciate it sooner or later. But how I handle that is almost in that situation, because that event has already happened. And if he's doing it in front of me, it's probably happened a whole lot of other times too, by the way. I could focus all day on Doug and what he's doing wrong, or I could start with, how can I best handle this situation right now? And that's what I love the value of the tool, is it really helps you center on, how am I going to respond to get an outcome of, I not only want Doug to understand the importance of it right now, but I also want him to appreciate it next week when I'm not here. And that is the value of the tool, is really helping you think about both short and long-term outcomes. We mentioned the feedback earlier. Quote from Andy Stanley I love to throw out: people who don't listen will eventually be surrounded by people with nothing to say. And I really want you to think about that quote in terms of near miss and near hit reporting, how you handle successes, and how you give and receive feedback. And there's obviously a quick little gauge for that. If all the feedback you give people is unsolicited, you're forcing it on them, that's probably a sign in the past you haven't given it or received it very well. If people are coming to you asking you for feedback, that's probably a good sign of culture and relationships, and you've responded fairly well in the past. So I wanted to think about that. And if you'll remember, I think it was 4 months ago, the article I wrote in the webinar talked about the good shepherd, and it said what it said at the bottom: sheep don't need a shepherd until the wolf shows up. And I really want to repeat that right now to say this: E plus R equals O in its application is most important during the most challenging and stressful situation, during the worst incidents. And how you respond matters, and it matters a lot. The worse the situation is, the more lasting effect the response is going to have. And I hope that makes sense to everybody. And I left a blank down here for a reason. What are some kind of specific challenges that you face, or situations in the past where you feel like maybe there was an opportunity you could have responded a little better? We've got 4 or 5 generic ones up here on the screen, but just give us something to work with here, and we'll kind of walk through the use of the E plus R equals O tools. What are some challenging situations you'd like to respond a little better to? Good news about this tool: if you deal with people at all, whether it's the people you live with, work with, or play with, they're going to give you hundreds of opportunities every single day to use this tool. That's a really good one. Teenager learning to drive, right? And because here's the thing, really think about it. I think one of the worst things you can do in terms of your response is while they've got their learner's permit and you're in the vehicle with them, micromanage them and make sure they're so perfect they never actually learn anything. And I wasn't planning on sharing this. I actually thought about it this morning, but since you brought that one up, Doug, I don't know, you were reading my mind. But I was thinking about this the other day. So my son just got his license like 3 or 4 months ago, and like 2 weeks after he got his license, and I really want you to think about this. He called me, and I could tell he was kind of in a panic, and I knew he was driving. I'm like, number one, are you stopped? Are you driving? He's like, no, I pulled over. And I was like, well, what happened? And he said, I just ran a red light. And it's in those moments that your response, right? Here's number one, voluntarily report an error or whatnot. And I was like, we kind of walked through like what happened or whatever. And it was basically like it was the first time he had driven by himself when it started raining. He was fiddling around with the windshield wiper, sitting at the light. The driver in front of him ran the red light for whatever reason. So he just blindly followed. And I just want you to think about the lasting impact of those kind of conversations and that kind of culture versus me just sitting there on Life 360 like we all do as parents. And, hey, you just ran a red light and I'm taking your license away for 2 weeks. Or what if I would have responded with that? There's no reason to ever run a red light. I'm taking your license away. The next time Carter actually wants to learn something and there's an opportunity there, he's not going to call me. He's not going to tell me anything. And to Doug's point, I probably won't find out some of those negative driving habits until, heaven forbid, I get a call from somebody else that he's been involved in an accident or whatever. So that's a good one. You got to think about, am I trying to teach people all the time to need me and be perfect? Or am I giving them opportunities to fail safe in the right kind of environment where we can learn? And so that was a good one. Let's take this one. I like this, and I'll make it a little more general, but for sure. Lack of Class 2 clothing usage in a right-of-way. This one's interesting, right? And I thank you for that one, Tim, because my obvious just initial thought without more detail is, are we focusing more on compliance or safety? And do we have some system problems? And by that, I just like being honest. I mean, if you're in a right of way that's out in the middle of the woods somewhere and there's no traffic and no public around, do you really need Class 2 clothing? And if your rule says you does and it's not focused on hazards and people don't understand that, that's kind of a hard sell. But if you focus on, number one, the reasons for those rules, what the hazards are, and the reason for the Class 2 clothing, and that would be situational, carrying, preventing harm, encouraging growth, probably going to be better outcome. And you could even just make that general. Like, there is always going to be some reluctance for people to wear PPE in whatever situation. So, Doug, your thoughts on that one? That's a really good example.
Well, I think the other part is that emotion and that when we talk about intelligence, those two things are two separate things. Like the emotion takes you to, somebody's picking on me when that happens, instead of saying to yourself, hey, what outcome do we want to happen? Because if that rule is written in a way that doesn't really condone the use in that spot, what kind of discussions are we having about it to change the outcome so that the response fits the outcome? So we actually know, because I think the people that make those rules, when they do it, they just assume that when you're on the job, regardless where it is, that becomes part of the DNA. So there again, it's the response matters. And the only way that you ever get it right is that you understand that you're doing it because you care about the outcome. Because when you have, especially anything in PPE, if you make it generic, you just showed people you don't care. And if you make it so that you say, hey, I had this in mind and these are the reasons why, now we have a discussion about what that looks like. So I would say that those should prompt a discussion, and you should really understand that emotional intelligence is going to weigh in there. Don't use your emotions as the lead. Use caring about, solving problems together as the lead, right?
Mm-hmm. And I'll always, with PPE, remember this. And it's something that I said earlier, and it's a good opportunity to, if it's always the manager or the safety person or the crew leader or whatever term you want to insert there, forcing compliance, it's going to be situational and people aren't going to love it. If it is that peer level, Doug and I are on a crew together, and I'm telling Doug he dang well better wear his class 2 clothing, even if I don't really handle it well, Doug's probably going to wear it and he's going to wear it all the time. People care a lot about what their peers say. And so teaching this tool to at the peer level is really, I always say that and say that's where the magic happens. That is where true culture, true values, true either I'm going to follow the rules and wear my PPE or where I'm not. That's where those norms are really created at that peer-to-peer level. So make sure you're fostering that kind of environment as well. And somebody did bring up a good point, and we said earlier, how you respond, especially to major incident matters, and it matters a lot. And one thing, when you have a major incident, there probably are going to be some legal and regulatory involvements, and it may not be wise to share too much or anything. But there's absolutely nothing wrong with ever just being honest to people and saying, hey, this, matter of fact, that is actually really wise at the start. One thing that drives me crazy is how before anybody's ever investigated something, we start sharing all the details and lessons learned from an incident. You can't because you don't know. And so it is actually really wise to say, hey, here's what happened. We had an electrical contact yesterday. We'll learn more when we're legally able and have actual valid, accurate information. That response of, I've got to share all the lessons learned within 24 hours and write some full-blown report on it, leads to a lot of speculation and a lot of sometimes things that are untrue and have to be corrected. And it also fosters that culture of naming and blaming rather than learning and improving. I think it's not that they're perfect, but the really good model for investigating major incidents is, boy, I was really getting ready to sound smart, Doug. Now I forgot. Who investigates airplane crashes? What agency? Somebody knows.
FAA.
Who? The FAA, whoever. Oh, yeah, there you go. Thank you. The NTSB. If you ever notice when they get on the news, I mean, all the other people involved in it, whether they're politicians or families or whoever, are giving you every answer to why it happened and how it's never going to happen again on their watch, so to speak. And all they ever say is, hey, we hadn't even started our investigation yet. We had nothing to tell. And I think there's probably some wisdom in that model. And sometimes those investigations take 6 months before they really will share anything. And I think we should, I'm not necessarily saying 6 months, but that's not a bad model to follow sometimes. In major incidents is, it's too early. We just don't know. Here's what happened.
And I think it goes back to C5 with caring, just saying, hey, look, we care about the victims in this case or the event enough that we want to make sure that we get it right. And so part of that is the emotional response to that too, is saying, hey, we're not going to act on emotion. We're going to act on, what I call facts and assumptions. You really have to say to yourself, hey, are these facts, are these assumptions? And we want to get it right, because whatever happened to David, I want to make sure it doesn't happen to someone else in the future. And that's the other part of these that makes it good. And I think that the best of the companies that do the best job in this, they ask themselves that we want the best outcome, like I just said, and we're going to wait to respond based on that because we actually want to get the outcome correct. So there again, that's part of that is the intelligence part is not always acting on what you feel, but acting on, caring about the people and making sure that it doesn't happen again. Anytime that I'm part of any of those, I tell people my goal is not for any other reason except to make sure that whatever happened to David doesn't happen to someone else.
100%. And that is outcome. If you read the article, it used the word, you have to define the outcome with extreme clarity. And I use that phrase intentionally. And by that, I mean, if there's been an incident and in any form or fashion, your outcome is to figure out who did what wrong, that ain't good. I'll just say that bluntly. If your outcome is to take care of whoever was negatively affected because you care about them, and then care enough about everybody else in your workforce to make sure that it doesn't happen to them as well, that's probably going to steer you in a pretty good direction. But I think a lot of times we make an assumption that we have defined our outcome as we want to prevent recurrence, when in reality, all our actions say otherwise. And what we're really looking for is who's to blame here and how are we going to fix them. So that's probably enough about incident analysis, but it's, again, those major incidents and major situations and stressors are when, as a leader, especially, it matters, and it matters the most. It really, really is. We could go through hundreds of examples like that, but I hope, if nothing else today, we're just motivating you a little bit to think to think at all before you respond to events, and focus more on because there again, if all that incident analysis is focused on the event, we're going in the wrong direction, because all you can ever do focused on the event is accuse, blame, complain, defend, deny, make excuses. That's all you can ever do. If you're focused more on the outcome, then you can respond appropriately. And that is a really good example of that.
And I think that really good final note for that is that you heard me say boil the soup, but get down to the more simple level of this. I mean, I think we're talking about events that are pretty complex. But if you're talking about something on a crew level or in an office level, is if a coworker makes a mistake on whatever it is, the whole idea is that we want to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Like the outcome is we want to learn and improve, or if it went really, really well, we want to duplicate it for someone else. So I think that we're spending a lot of time talking about the outcomes or the reaction part. But I tell people, if David had a job that went unbelievably awesome today, no matter what the job was, are we actually sharing that for the outcome and responding that way? Because that's the part that we lack on the most.
Bam, you are so right. And I love the fact, like, what gets shared all the time in this industry, just go pop it up on LinkedIn or YouTube or whatever. If there's like a crew working out in the field and a member of the public has been involved in a vehicle accident, or somebody's had a heart attack near their job site or something like that, and we respond well, man, we share that and the lessons learned, and we praise those people and all that. But stuff like that, maybe not in those extreme situations, is going on all the time. And I just don't think people share successes enough. So that's, again, think about how you respond to success, and don't always just focus on the errors and what's going wrong. Look for opportunities where people are doing things right, and make sure those get shared as well. There needs to be a better balance of that. And almost every single organization that I know about is people tend to be pretty good at sharing the things that have gone wrong and try to learn lessons. But we're not so great at sharing when things go right. And it doesn't have to be a heroic saving somebody's life kind of event to share some lessons learned from things that people are doing really well and why they're doing it. Really important. The other thing the tool helps you with is to respond in the correct circle, right? And you've probably seen this if you've read Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Chapter 1 talks about being proactive. In the book, Covey defines a circle of influence and concern. Basically says the same thing that we're talking about today. And his basic premise is your circle of concern is these events that we're talking about. You can't do anything about it. It's the whole world and the whole organization and all the other people around you, right? It's that other driver with road rage. It's that legacy culture from 15 years ago, whatever it may be. And basically his premise, and I love it, is you shrink your circle of concern by growing your circle of influence. Now, for purposes of our frontline training, we added to that the circle of control, which is yourself. And you have to start there. You start with yourself. Think about how you're going to respond to whatever event. That's going to help you grow your influence and shrink that circle of concern. So I wanted to make sure that we threw that out, because it's a great question to ask people. Is you teach them this tool, and you got to be careful with this tool. I joke with this all the time, but it is decidedly true. You wouldn't have to spend more than 3 or 4 days at my house. If I'm not handling a situation well, my wife can just look at me and she say, David, what's your O right now? Because she knows this tool, E plus R equals O, meaning how have you defined your outcome? And usually when she asks that question, it takes me about that long to realize that she's 100% right, and I need to change how I'm responding to whatever the event was. So you got to be careful teaching this tool to other people, but because it leads to those questions. What's your O right now? And a great question I like to ask people is, what circle are you in right now? Is it a circle of concern that we really can't do anything about, or is it a circle of influence or control that we can talk about? And so those are two great questions to ask. Is what circle are we in, and what do we want our outcome to be? And here's kind of a comparison. And I actually like to do this, and I encourage everybody to do this. Get a sheet of paper, don't fill in the bottom part of it, and just write A, B, C, D, E on the left side of it. And then E plus R equals O on the right hand side of it. And just keep it in your pocket for like a whole day or even 2 or 3 hours. And just every time you interact with somebody, every time in terms of what we're talking about today, every time you face an event, just write down a little tick mark. Did I gravitate more towards A, B, C, D, E, or did I gravitate more towards defining my outcome and responding well? And that will, if you're honest with yourself, that will provide you probably a lot of good information on how naturally, emotionally intelligent you are. And sometimes that sheet of paper hurts my feelings after about an hour and a half, and I just throw it away, which is probably not a good response, but it does give you a lot of good information. Notice in there, I put, just like we do in C5 leadership, caring is in the middle. If everything revolves around how much you care, you're probably going to respond really well most of the time. And I should say this, and everybody, I want to make this point. This is not the perfect tool, meaning if you clearly, with extreme clarity, define what you want your outcome to be, and you respond perfectly based on that definition of your outcome, it doesn't mean everybody involved still going to handle it well and be perfect with you. All you can do is think about, here's my circle of control, and I've done the best that I can. Hopefully that grows your influence and over time shrinks your circle of concern. That's a really important point to make. But try that sometime. I really highly encourage you to do it. And I took this straight from the article, but I thought part of it was worth. I despise people that read PowerPoint slides, but I'm going to do it. So everybody just bear with me for a second. The primary value of the E plus R equals O tool is it gives you time to think. Pausing between the event and the response. That's all we're talking about here. And think about all the tools you've learned. Stop, think, act, review, think before you act, self-checks, all of it centers around that. Pause between the event and the response. Most of the time, that pause is like 5 seconds or less. It doesn't take long. It's just, again, the more stressful, maybe the longer the pause needs to be. Pausing between the event and the response allows you to focus your attention. Here's what I want you to do. And here's what I want everybody to take away from this. Make a habit of practicing this tool during simple events in low-risk environments so you can use it well when you really need it. I 100% promise you, if you don't do that, it won't work when you really need it. That is the key point. Like, just start thinking about every event. Like, hey, I attended this Frontline Fundamentals webinar today. That's an event. Now, I'm not saying we liked it, you liked it. That's what's not important. There's been some at least fairly decent information that will work if you use it. You could respond and say, well, I got my CUSP point, check the box, I'm not doing anything with it. Might not even be listening right now. That's also a response. Or you could respond by saying, I'm going to go practice this tool at least 3 times today. And just see if you like it and start working, because it becomes a habit and it really is a valuable tool. Especially, and so hopefully in minor situations. Like I said, the good thing about this tool, you get hundreds of opportunities every single day to practice this tool. Next time you encounter a challenging person or situation, ask yourself, what's my desired outcome? Once you have defined that with extreme clarity, the approach to handling the person in the situation should become obvious, which increases, not guarantees, the likelihood that you will achieve your desired outcome. And I really do like to say, like, this is E plus R equals O is life skills. That's really what it is. And life skills are all about how we handle people. We wouldn't need to talk about safety and culture and relationships and all that if people weren't involved. That's not to say people are bad. People are fantastic. But how you interact with them. That's really what this tool does, is help you increase the effectiveness of your interactions with other people, at least you're a part of. Employing this tool can help enhance culture, safety, relationships, emotional intelligence, and decision-making. And again, to repeat, to maximize its value, however, you must be first trained in its use, which isn't hard. It's not a hard tool. and use it properly and practice it in low risk, low stress events. Now I got excited because I saw somebody talk. I'm going to go use this tool today, but that's Doug, and Doug already knows this tool. So I hope the rest of you, and Doug's good at this tool. He really is. Sometimes I like to see how mad I can make Doug just to give him opportunities to practice it. And he's really good at it. He really is. He can de-escalate a situation well, which is not always easy to do with me, by the way. So I want to take a minute. I will give Doug a chance for his thoughts. But let me say, if you're not already, and I'm assuming most of you are, subscribed to Incident Prevention Magazine, because that's really probably the only way you would be here right now. But if you're not, it's free. Subscribe to it. The IPI forums, I think looking through the list, most of you come to it. If you don't, it's free the second Friday of each month. We have a panel of subject matter experts that, the way I like to explain it, there's not a question you can ask that they can't answer or find the answer to. And we've been doing that thing for like 7 or 8 years now, once a month, and nobody has ever asked a question that they couldn't answer or didn't find the answer to. So don't miss that opportunity for free to talk to those level of subject matter experts. And in October, last week of October, is our next IP conference that I know a couple of you already signed up for, and hope to see all of you there. If you're interested, check that out. So that was just a couple of announcements. Doug, thoughts from you? And while Doug's offering us his thoughts, please use the chat window or raise your hand. We'll unmute you. Ask questions. What'd you think? How do you use this tool? Just whatever it is. Let's talk about it and use our time wisely.
Well, again, David, I appreciate being here. These guys, this is how you get the most learnings is amongst your peers. And I tell people that this kind of discussion, taking this subject back to your work groups and having a discussion with your, the people you work with and for, are really how you're going to, change the outcome for what you want it to do. And what couple things that I tell especially the juniors that work for me, I tell them, I don't want you to be as good as me. I want you to be better. And I think that spend time, developing these tools so that emotional intelligence becomes more of a mainstay of what's happening. This is a painful tool to use if you're a very emotional person, but you also have to tell yourself, as David and I pointed out, we both are pretty erratic about our emotional responses sometimes. And I tell people that you have to test yourself on what do you want the outcome to be. And I go back to the circle of control, saying control what you can control, not what you can't. And the person that can control the most of that is you. And when you do that, you'll influence your team to do the same. You'll influence your organization to change in a good manner. So look forward to spending time. Hopefully some of you will make it onto the forum with us, and also see us in Glendale for the IP conference. So appreciate the time today, David. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. Yep. And somebody asked, speaking of IP conferences, not in the next 3 years. So planning conferences is crazy. The hotel availability and all that, I won't get into it. The next one after Glendale will be in Orlando. I think like the first week of May 5th through 7th. Those dates might be wrong, but they're pretty close. And Orlando is always a great place to go. And then the one next fall is actually going to be in Glendale again. So both great places to go. The good news is Texas on an airplane isn't far from anywhere in today's world. So we hope to see you there. And on those notes, though, if you have like places you'd like to see us come to for conferences, topics you'd like to see covered in the magazine, questions you want answered in either the forums and or the magazine, there's a Q&A section in there with a lot of those same subject matter experts. Please share them. Reach out to me. We love to hear any feedback that you have, as we mentioned today, on things that you think we're doing well, but also if there's any opportunities for improvement. Our mission is to provide education, information, and networking opportunities to anybody in the utility industry. And if you've got suggestions on how we can do that better, we're always open to them. So thank you for that. Other questions, comments, concerns? common response in any training you go to. Event is somebody asks a question. Outcome is everybody's sitting here thinking, I'm getting 5 minutes of my day back, so I'm not going to say anything. You could also think, hey, I've got a question everybody else might. Comments, please ask. Solid. The NSC was in New Orleans recently. That is a pretty good play. They've got a good convention center there, no doubt.
Well, either we did a